This is Rummy's Corner. Evander Holyfield got his first opportunity to fight for a major world championship on July 12, 1986, when he challenged WBA cruiserweight champion Dwight Muhammad Qawi. It was a fiercely competitive, intriguing clash of styles, where Qawi and Holyfield were both having moments with several mini shifts in momentum. This one wound up being one of the last great 15-round championship contests, and at the end of 15 rounds of action, one judge scored it 143 to 141 for Qawi, overruled by the other two judges who both had it for Holyfield, 144 to 140 and 147 to 138. It was a split decision victory for Holyfield, who had just become the new WBA cruiserweight champion. Holyfield made the first defense of his title on February 14, 1987, when he faced challenger Henry Tillman. Holyfield dropped Tillman with a quick combination in round 2. Holyfield then proceeded to patiently break Tillman down in methodical fashion. Holyfield dropped Tillman 3 times in round 7, the last of which came compliments of a couple of crisp hooks. With the 3 knockdown rule in effect, the fight was over. It was a 7th round technical knockout for Evander. Holyfield made the second defense of his title on May 15, 1987, in a unification bout against IBF champion Ricky Parkey. Holyfield dropped Parkey with a terrific right late in round 3. Parkey beat the count, but Holyfield's follow-up attack was ferocious, and referee Davey Pearl waved it off just as Holyfield landed a booming right that dropped Parkey again. It was a 3rd round technical knockout, and Holyfield had become the new unified WBA IBF cruiserweight champion. On August 15, 1987, Holyfield made his 3rd defense when he faced challenger Ozzy Ocasio. Holyfield seized command early and never looked back. In round 11, Holyfield landed a nice assortment of punches that dropped the challenger. Ocasio made it to his feet, but Holyfield unloaded furiously and referee John Coyle waved it off. It was an 11th round stoppage for Evander. Holyfield made his 4th defense on December 5, 1987, when he had a rematch against Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Only the IBF sanctioned this bout, not the WBA. This one started off as another bruising affair, much like their first encounter. In round 4, Holyfield put together a nice sequence of punches that floored the challenger. Qawi made it to his feet, but before long, a booming right from Evander had him down again. This time, Qawi was unable to beat the count, and the fight was over. It was a 4th round knockout for Evander. Holyfield made his 5th title defense on April 9, 1988, in a unification bout against WBC cruiserweight champion Carlos De Leon. Holyfield took charge early, and he never allowed De Leon the chance to find his groove. Holyfield was thoroughly outclassing De Leon, and he was landing a wide variety of punches seemingly at will. In round 8, Holyfield unloaded a prolonged barrage of unanswered punches that prompted referee Mills Lane to call it off. It was an 8th round technical knockout, and Evander Holyfield had just become the new, undisputed WBA, IBF, WBC cruiserweight champion of the world. This wound up being Holyfield's 5th and final defense of the cruiserweight championship. Holyfield's next championship bout happened on October 25, 1990, when he challenged the undisputed heavyweight world champion James "Buster" Douglas. Holyfield's quickness was proving tricky for Buster in the early going. In round 3, Holyfield nailed Douglas with a sensational counter right hand. Douglas was down, and he was unable to beat the count. The fight was over, it was a third-round knockout, and Evander Real Deal Holyfield had just become the new, undisputed WBC, WBA, IBF heavyweight champion of the world. Holyfield made the first defense of his heavyweight world championship on April 19, 1991, when he squared off against former heavyweight world champion Big George Foreman. To the surprise of many, Foreman put forth a very spirited effort and he had his fair share of moments. But despite some challenging spots, by and large, Holyfield was in control of the fight and he was outboxing his older challenger. Foreman had a point deducted for a low blow in round 11, and at the end of 12 rounds of action, Holyfield was awarded a unanimous decision victory with scores of 115 to 112, 117 to 110, and 116 to 111. Holyfield made the second defense of his heavyweight world championship on November 23, 1991, when he went up against challenger Bert Cooper. Cooper was a late replacement for Francesco Damiani, who himself was a replacement opponent for Iron Mike Tyson. The WBC refused to sanction the bout. Holyfield got off to a fast start and he dropped Cooper in the opening round with a left downstairs. Cooper had Holyfield hurt early in the third, and he followed up nicely to score an official knockdown. Late in round 7, Holyfield unleashed a prolonged barrage that included several wicked uppercuts. Referee Mills Lane didn't like what he saw, and he called it off. It was a 7th round technical knockout for Evander. On June 19, 1992, Holyfield made the third defense of his heavyweight world championship when he squared off against former champion Larry Holmes. The Eastern Assassin was very crafty and he proved to be an awkward foe for the champion. At times, Holmes was very resourceful and he was finding clever ways to disrupt Evander's tactics. But despite some difficulty, Holyfield still managed to decisively outbox Holmes for the majority of the contest. At the end of 12 rounds of action, Holyfield was awarded a unanimous decision victory, with 2 judges scoring it 116 to 112, and the other having it 117 to 111. Holyfield made the fourth defense of his heavyweight world championship on November 13, 1992, when he faced undefeated challenger Riddick Big Daddy Bowe. This one quickly evolved into an action-packed slugfest with several crowd-pleasing shifts in momentum. Both boxers were showcasing an eagerness to stand and trade, and as the rounds progressed, Holyfield was having difficulty coping with the size and strength of Big Daddy Bowe. The champion was displaying incredible heart and determination, but he was simply being outgunned by Bowe. Bowe dropped Holyfield with a big right hand in the 11th, but Holyfield beat the count and continued battling it out until the final bell. At the end of 12 rounds of intense action, Bowe was awarded a unanimous decision victory, with one judge scoring it 115 to 112, and the other 2 judges both having it 117 to 110. Riddick Bowe had just become the new, undisputed WBC, WBA, IBF heavyweight champion of the world. Holyfield got his next opportunity to compete for a major world championship when he had a rematch with Bowe on November 6, 1993. This time around, Holyfield was more focused on patiently boxing at a measured pace. There were still a lot of fireworks that saw both boxers having spots of success, but the overall rhythm was far more tactical. A bizarre incident involving the fan man caused a 20-plus minute delay, and when action resumed, the match proceeded in familiar form. Both warriors strategically battled it out until the final bell, and at the end of 12 rounds of action, one judge scored it a draw at 114 apiece, overruled by the other 2 judges who both scored it for Holyfield 115 to 113 and 115 to 114. It was a majority decision, and Evander Holyfield had just become the new, unified WBA IBF heavyweight champion of the world, marking him as a two-time heavyweight champion. Holyfield made the first defense in his second reign as heavyweight world champion on April 22, 1994, when he squared off against undefeated challenger Michael Moorer. Holyfield landed a sneaky left in round 2 that dropped Moorer to the canvas, but the challenger rebounded from the knockdown and he put forth a workmanlike effort where he was boxing very effectively. It was a close and competitive contest, and at the end of 12 rounds of action, one judge scored it even at 114 apiece, overruled by the other two judges who both scored it for Moorer 115 to 114 and 116 to 112. Michael Moorer had just become the new unified WBA IBF heavyweight world champion. Holyfield received his next opportunity to compete for a major world championship on November 9th, 1996, when he challenged WBA heavyweight champion Iron Mike Tyson. Holyfield weathered the early storm as Tyson rushed out attacking. Evander quickly made adjustments and he was largely able to outthink and outbox the champion. In round 6, Holyfield landed a well-timed body shot that floored Tyson. Holyfield was in complete command of the rhythm, and in round 10, the real deal unleashed a furious prolonged assault that appeared to have Tyson badly hurt. Holyfield resumed his attack in the 11th, and after a mighty barrage of unanswered punches, referee Mitch Halpern called a halt to the action. It was an 11th round technical knockout, and Evander Holyfield had just become the new WBA heavyweight world champion, which made him a 3-time heavyweight champion. Holyfield made the first defense in his third reign as heavyweight champion when he had an immediate rematch against Tyson on June 28, 1997. The intensity level was high, and Holyfield was outboxing Tyson in the early going. Tyson was trying his best, but Holyfield had an answer for everything he tried. Referee Mills Lane deducted 2 points from Tyson in round 3 for deliberately biting Evander. When action resumed after a quick delay, Tyson bit Holyfield again, but Lane didn't see it, and at the end of round 3, Lane discovered what happened and he disqualified Tyson and the fight was over. Holyfield made the second defense of his title on November 8, 1997, when he faced IBF heavyweight champion Michael Moorer in a unification bout. The rematch saw a familiar pattern where Holyfield and Moorer were both boxing on fairly even terms. Holyfield seized control when he dropped Moorer in round 5. Holyfield proceeded to drop Moorer twice more in round 7, and then twice more again in round 8. Moorer bravely battled on, but at the conclusion of round 8, referee Mitch Halpern stopped the fight per the advice of ringside physician Flip Hamansky. It was an 8th round stoppage for Evander, who now unified the IBF title with his WBA belt. On September 19, 1998, Holyfield made his third title defense when he squared off against challenger Vaughn Bean. Bean's awkward style was causing Holyfield some problems, and the champion didn't seem especially sharp. Bean was making a very strong account of himself, but Holyfield remained focused and determined. Holyfield dropped the challenger with a sneaky right hand in round 10. Bean battled on, and he finished strong, but it wasn't enough. At the end of 12 rounds, Evander was awarded a unanimous decision with 2 judges scoring it 117 to 110, and the other judge having it 116 to 111. Holyfield made his 4th title defense on March 13, 1999, when he participated in a heavyweight unification bout against WBC champion Lennox Ruiz. Both champions were relatively cautious with their approach. This trend favored Lennox, who was able to score more consistently by using his long jab where he was usually effective at keeping things at range. At the end of 12 rounds, one judge had it even at 115 apiece. One judge scored it 116 to 113 in favor of Ruiz, and the final judge had it 115 to 113 for Holyfield. The fight was officially ruled a draw where each boxer kept his respective titles, but this was a controversial decision where the majority of observers believed Lennox deserved to win. Holyfield made his fifth title defense on November 13, 1999, when he had an immediate rematch with Lennox Lewis. This fight had a similar rhythm and flow as their first contest. Holyfield was taking a few more risks this time around, and he was doing better because of it. That made for a more competitive matchup, but Lewis was still jabbing well and boxing effectively from the outside. It largely remained a tactical engagement with scattered short explosive action occasionally breaking out. At the end of 12 rounds, Lennox was awarded a unanimous decision victory with final scores of 116 to 112, 115 to 113, and 117 to 111. Lennox Lewis had just become the new undisputed WBC, WBA, IBF heavyweight champion of the world. Holyfield got his next title fight on August 12, 2000, when he squared off against John Ruiz for the vacant WBA belt. Ruiz had an awkward style that made for an awkward matchup. Holyfield appeared to have Ruiz hurt in the third round, but before long, Ruiz was consistently doing a good job of disrupting Holyfield's tactics while finding some scoring opportunities of his own. It was a scrappy competitive affair, and at the end of 12 rounds, Holyfield was awarded a somewhat controversial unanimous decision victory, with two judges scoring it 114 to 113, and the other scoring it 116 to 112. Holyfield won the vacant WBA belt, marking him as a four-time heavyweight champion. Holyfield made the first defense in his fourth heavyweight reign when he had an immediate rematch against John Ruiz on March 3, 2001. The clash of styles was eerily similar to their first encounter, but this time Ruiz was doing a better job out-muscling the champion. Holyfield was deducted a point for a low blow in round 10, and early in round 11, Ruiz dropped Evander with a short combination that included a well-timed right hand, and Holyfield went down. At the conclusion of 12 rounds, Ruiz was awarded a unanimous decision with official scores of 116 to 110, 115 to 111, and 114 to 111. John Ruiz was the new WBA champion. Holyfield had a rubber match with Ruiz on December 15, 2001. The style matchup provided the same type of action we saw in their first two bouts, but this time Holyfield appeared to be more effective down the final stretch of the fight, where he was outworking and outlanding Ruiz. At the end of 12 rounds, one judge had it 116 to 112 for Holyfield, another judge had it 115 to 113 for Ruiz, and the third judge had it even at 114 apiece. So the fight was ruled a draw, and Ruiz retained the WBA belt. On December 14, 2002, Holyfield got another opportunity to fight for a title when he went up against Byrd for the vacant IBF strap. Byrd put on a fine performance where he was consistently outslicking Holyfield with quickness and stellar positioning. Holyfield was frequently off balance and out of position as Byrd effectively outmaneuvered him throughout most of the fight. At the end of 12 rounds, Byrd was awarded a unanimous decision with two judges scoring it 117 to 111 and the other scoring it 116 to 112. Byrd had just become the new IBF heavyweight champion. Holyfield got his next opportunity to fight for a title when he challenged WBO champion Sultan Ibragimov on October 13, 2007. The Southpaw champion was able to fluster Holyfield early and often with good movement and faster hand speed. Ibragimov was effectively jabbing from the outside, and he was doing a good job smothering Evander whenever he got too close. At the end of 12 rounds, Ibragimov was awarded a unanimous decision victory, with 2 judges scoring the bout 117 to 111 and the other scoring it 118 to 110. On December 20th, 2008, Holyfield challenged WBA champion Nikolai Valuev. This one wound up being largely uneventful. Valuev was ineffectively following Holyfield around throughout most of the fight, but he wasn't throwing many punches. Holyfield wasn't doing a whole lot either, but he was still generally throwing and landing more than the champion. At the end of 12 rounds, one judge had it even at 114 apiece, overruled by the other 2 judges who scored it for Valuev 115 to 114 and 116 to 112. It was a majority decision, and Valuev retained his WBA strap in what many believed was a controversial verdict. This wound up being the final championship contest during the long and illustrious Hall of Fame career of Evander "Real Deal" Holyfield. In conclusion, with regards to championship contests, at cruiserweight, Holyfield had 6 bouts, with 6 victories, 0 defeats, 0 draws, and 5 of those 6 wins coming by way of knockout. At heavyweight, Holyfield had 19 bouts, with 10 victories, 7 defeats, 2 draws, and 4 of those 10 wins coming by way of knockout. So the final championship record for Evander Holyfield consisted of 25 contests with 16 victories, 7 defeats, 2 draws, and 9 of those 16 victories coming by way of knockout. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful night. This is Rummy's Corner.